Greetings Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Maverick family. Lots to talk about tonight. Wildfires out in Western Canada, Alberta, British Columbia, prompting evacuations. The Biden administration in the United States announcing new tariffs against China. It's a trade war. We have used versus new vehicles. What's offering the most value in an automotive marketplace that analysts say is beginning to return to normality finally following the pandemic. Major new investments as well in the auto industry. Another one announced today. Trump back in court. We also saw an Israeli flag raising in Ottawa today, and Chris Dacey, out there shooting video, was attacked by a protester. We have video of that. And we have other things to talk about as well. If we have time, we'll get into Pierre Poilievre talking about the Safe Hospital Act and the impact again of the Justin Trudeau Liberal government drug policies and the insane impact it is having on Canadian society. So, do not go away. Buckle up. You're in for one heck of a ride tonight. We'll be right back on the other side of this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
All right. Hang on a second here. All right, first up, let's talk about these wildfires out in Western Canada. An evacuation order has been issued for some Fort McMurray neighborhoods. So this is like deja vu for a lot of the people living out there, because back in 2016, so many homes were destroyed in that wildfire disaster, and we've seen every year more wildfires in that area. Tonight we're looking at 4 Fort McMurray neighborhoods ordered to evacuate. Wildfire spreading, getting closer by the minute to the town of Fort McMurray. So Alberta Emergency Alert has issued the order for Beacon Hill, Abasand, Prairie Creek, and Grayling Terrace. And all the residents at this point should have left by this time. Now, these other areas are under evacuation alert. Fort McMurray, Sapray Creek, Gregoire Lake Estates, Fort McMurray First Nation, number 468, Anzac, and Rickards Landing Industrial Park. And the reports we're getting out of there tell us that there is thick smoke and the fire is spreading quickly. Here are some images from today. And you can see the sky is just thick, just blocked with smoke tonight. Now, we also have, here's another image. So I have to get rid of this on the screen. It's not letting me. Try one more time. Things are freezing up on us here. Let's try another. Yeah, I wish we had a better system to get these images up on the screen for you. Well, there's a lot of smoke, I can tell you that. It's very smoky out there. And it's not just in Alberta where we saw those images from Fort McMurray. We're also seeing up around Fort Nelson in British Columbia, similar situation. Crews would say that conditions there have improved a bit because of favorable weather conditions today. But the fire has grown from 53 to 84 square kilometers. And the BC Wildfire Service Information Department is saying that previously predicted strong winds did not materialize overnight. So the fire did not spread quite as quickly today as it was originally expected to. It's being described in its own way as a war zone. 4,700 residents in Fort Nelson and nearby Fort Nelson First Nation evacuated their homes back on Friday. Started heading for communities, in some cases hundreds of kilometers to the south, to places like Fort St. John and Prince George. So this is just, still a developing story, and it's really just the beginning of wildfire season. Of course, people already speculating on the possible causes of these fires. We don't know yet in these particular instances what the cause of these blazes are or might be, but we do know that arson is top of mind for a lot of people. So we just brought you up to date on that tonight. It's something we spoke about in depth the other night, and the situation just continues to get worse, particularly out in Fort McMurray, where, as I say, back in 2016 they had that huge disaster. And tonight, fire creeping ever so close to their town again. Now, also, we're hearing reports as well in areas where people have been evacuated that there is some looting that has been going on. But obviously, you need to stay safe. And so even though looting is happening in some areas, if police have told you to evacuate, you would be well advised to do just that. Now, tonight also, a lot of talk about the auto industry, about China, about trade. So today, Joe Biden embraced tariffs. This is sort of an area that has been the domain of Donald Trump. And while I personally, it was just my personal view on tariffs, I was always pretty much against the use of tariffs. But in recent years, I've sort of changed my view on them, and that's because if you have other countries who are engaging in economic activity where huge government subsidies are used, then the only way to battle back if you want to have any kind of free market economy domestically is with tariffs. Impose tariffs on the incoming goods in order to level the playing field for domestic producers of whatever the product might be. Now tonight, as I say, Joe Biden has embraced tariffs. He was delivering remarks today on his agenda to promote American investments and jobs. And he's saying very much what I've heard Donald Trump sort of say, but in his own way. And that is that the U.S. government needs to level the playing field for American workers in the face of massive government subsidized industries in China. China, an emerging economic threat, no doubt about that, a threat to the United States, insofar as their trade practices are focused on dominance in particular industries. And frankly, yes, sometimes they do engage in unfair trade practices up to and including the theft of technology. Here's Biden explaining, the best he can, given his condition, what this is all about today.
Well, you should be. You're responsible for a lot of this. Thank you for joining us as I announced a series of actions to make sure American workers and American business and corporations can compete and win in the industries of the future, because that's what this is about. The fact is, American workers can outwork and outcompete anyone as long as the competition is fair. But for too long, it hasn't been fair. For years, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese companies across a whole range of industries: steel and aluminum, semiconductors, electric vehicles, solar panels, the industries of the future, and even critical health equipment like gloves and masks. China heavily subsidized all these products, pushing Chinese companies to produce far more than the rest of the world can absorb, and then dumping the excess products onto the market at unfairly low prices, driving other manufacturers around the world out of business. You know, I won't go into it, but we were talking today about how many aluminum plants there used to be and how many there are now. The price is unfairly low because Chinese companies don't need to worry about a profit, because the Chinese government subsidizes them and subsidizes them heavily. And the Chinese relies on other anti-competitive tactics as well, like forcing American companies to transfer their technology in order to do business in China. I spent a lot of time with Xi Jinping. Early on, I told him, he said, "Why am I being unfair with China?" Not unfair. I said, "Look, we'll play by the same rules if you want. If you want to do business in China, you got to have a 51% Chinese owner. You got to provide access to all your intellectual property, etc. You want to do that in America? With silence. Sometimes they just outright steal through cyber espionage and other means. And it's been well documented and internationally recognized. And when you make tactics like these, you're not competing. It's not competition. It's cheating. And we've seen damage here in America. To name one example, back in 2000, when cheap steel from China began to flood the market, U.S. steel towns across Pennsylvania and Ohio were hit hard, and any of you from those areas know well. More than 1,800 iron workers and steel workers in Pennsylvania and Ohio lost their jobs. I'm not going to let that happen again. That's why today I'm announcing new tariffs in key sectors of the economy that are going to ensure that our workers are not held back by unfair trade practices. They include the thing I'm announcing today: 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum products, and we'll counter China's overcapacity in these industries. And we're making major investments in clean American steel and aluminum. Clean American steel and aluminum. It's a big deal. Clean because of the way we manufacture it here. It emits half as much carbon as steel made in China. Last month, my administration announced the largest investment in clean manufacturing in all of history, up to $1.5 billion.
Okay, so we'll pull out of that for the moment. Now, back in 2019, Biden went after President Trump, slamming him because of Trump's move to impose tariffs on some $300 billion worth of Chinese imports at the time. And back then he said, Trump doesn't get the basics. This is a quote. Biden went on and said he thinks his tariffs are being paid by China. And then he says, any freshman econ student could tell you that the American people are paying his tariffs. And there's some logic to that argument. But now Biden, in the face of this rising competition from China and scrutiny from voters in this election year, has decided to embrace tariffs himself. So we're looking here at $18 billion worth of new tariffs on Chinese imports. That's a pretty big deal in itself. And a lot of this will affect the auto industry now. At the White House also, we had comments from Catherine Tai, the U.S. Trade Representative, Ambassador, who recently completed a study on tariffs. And this is, let's go to Ambassador Tai at the White House. And her study is part of what these new tariffs and this new economic plan is predicated on. And here's Ambassador Tai. Where's my tab? Hang on just a moment. Too much. Right there. I've got it. Okay. Ambassador Tai.
Action by the President defends American workers and businesses from the PRC's artificially cheap products, whether EVs or steel or critical minerals or semiconductors. I also want to emphasize that we continue to consult with our partners and our allies who face similar threats from the PRC's unfair trade practices and are also voicing their concern with those unfair practices and taking action. Our partners are essential to addressing the broader threat to our working families and businesses. Today's strong tariff announcement is an important part of President Biden's worker-centered trade policy, which is about using trade to empower workers and making sure that they can compete fairly and thrive, and supports the historic investments we have already made here at home. I can now take your questions.
Thank you, Ambassador. First, there seems to be some confidence that these tariffs won't cause the competition to slide into conflict with China. If you could just explain a little bit about why you are so confident. And then secondly, BYD is looking to build EV factories in Mexico that could flood the US market. Why isn't the administration preemptively announcing tariffs to hit these vehicles?
So, you actually asked two questions.
I did.
Yes.
Sorry.
So let me begin with the first, which is that we've been very, very clear about the strategic nature of this tariff review process and the focus on ensuring that the actions that are announced will be effective in leveling the playing field, giving our workers and our businesses the chance to continue to compete and to thrive against an onslaught of really, really challenging measures and a challenging economic system that is coming from Beijing. We have been clear about this with the American public. We have also been equally clear about this with our counterparts in Beijing. Every single one of us, from the president on down, over the course of the last 3 years have made clear the challenges that we are facing, the nature of that challenge, and the need for us to act. Because we know what happens if we don't act and we don't defend. We will see the same patterns repeated over and over again. So what we are doing today should by no means be a surprise to our counterparts in Beijing. We have made clear this is not about escalation. This is about the consequences of decades of economic policy and the need for the United States to defend our rights.
The second question.
And the second question was on EVs and BYD in Mexico. At USTR, that is exactly what we are built to worry about and to be concerned with. That will require a separate pathway. This is about imports from China. What you're talking about would be imports from Mexico. Equally important, something that we are talking to our industry, our workers, and our partners about. And I would just ask you to stay tuned.
Thanks, Ambassador.
So-
When Trump hiked tariffs,
When we're talking about BYD, that's a Chinese automotive company. I've been talking about it here on this program, especially over the last month. BYD now in China, outgrowing Tesla. China, a growing market, not just for the manufacturing of EVs, but also for the consumption of EVs. BYD emerging globally now as one of the major automotive companies in the world. When we were in Costa Rica, I noticed actually quite a few BYD automobiles on the roads down there. And so that's the new reality of the auto industry. And BYD moving into Mexico. Manufacturing facilities now moving globally. But they're Chinese based, and yet, who is it? Who's one of the largest investors in BYD? Warren Buffett. These companies are global in scope, in focus, and the investments being made here domestically in Canada and the United States are unprecedented. The investments coming from the government side, billions of dollars. Just in Ontario, within the last couple of weeks, $15 billion for Honda to retrofit several factories in the province, all pushing toward the electrification of the auto industry. And now, again, another announcement on the Canadian side in Ontario feeding the automotive industry. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing another factory in Port Colborne, Ontario. The Ashai Kasai, I hope I'm pronouncing that company's name correctly, EV battery separator plant. We have comments from Trudeau on this. And it all ties together with everything that's going on in North America with the electrification of the auto industry. Stellantis in Windsor, Volkswagen massive battery plant in St. Thomas, Ontario. We're seeing investments up in Oshawa, Honda, Alliston, billions of dollars, unprecedented amounts of government money being pumped into this effort to refocus, rejig, completely transform the auto industry.
C'est là que Volkswagen construit une nouvelle usine de batterie qui va créer des bons emplois dans la région. It's also going from a childcare announcement just down the road in St. Thomas to a EV supply chain announcement here is not too far a jump, because part of what the advantage that companies are looking for when they invest in Canada is knowing that people are part of strong communities with the supports, whether it's childcare or healthcare or vibrant communities that they need to be successful for decades to come in their businesses. So whether it's St. Thomas or here in Colborne, these major manufacturing investments will create and secure jobs for generations to come. Of course,
maybe it might secure jobs for decades to come. The question is, will it work? Will these investments actually pay off? The competition from countries like China and even Vietnam is already intense. China now controls somewhere around 50 to 60% of the entire supply chain for electric vehicles globally. And about half of all electric vehicle manufacturing in the world is in China. They are ahead of the curve, and massive government investment in these corporations, these auto companies here in North America, is honestly a gamble. They are rolling the dice, and we all better hope and pray that it actually pays off. Stay with me, more ahead.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
This next story may be disturbing to some people, so I just want to warn you in advance. This is a story about child exploitation. This has an investigation that has been going on since 2005 by RCMP out in Saskatchewan. And today they updated the public on the status of their investigation and charges laid against a Richard Dyke, 47 years old. He was taken into custody back in November of last year after police received a report of alleged historical sexual assaults against 3 male youths under the age of 12. Now, he was arrested by RCMP after they executed a search warrant at a licensed home-based daycare in Assiniboia, Saskatchewan. The daycare out there was operated by Dyke's spouse and was based out of his home, according to police. Now, they've seized an electronic device and some 24 terabytes worth of electronic evidence, digital evidence. Police say that the magnitude of this investigation has proven, to say the least, significant. Investigators have analyzed over 1.5 million pieces of digital evidence, according to RCMP Chief Superintendent Ted Monroe. We have Monroe here now, queued up for you. Except that my computer is frozen again. We're working on it. Here we go. Trying. We're having some electrical interference or something in the building. It's making everything spin. I apologize for the delay. I'm just waiting for the computer to respond. Here we go. And
Superintendent Ted Monroe, I am
here we
the
go.
officer in charge of the criminal operations for the Saskatchewan RCMP. Today I'm providing an update on an investigation that began last year. In November 2023, Cornack RCMP received a report of a historical sexual assault of a child. As part of that investigation, officers executed a search warrant at a residence in Assiniboia. 47-year-old Richard Dyke was arrested during that execution of that search warrant. He was later charged with multiple sexual-based offenses. Richard Dyke has remained in custody since his arrest in November 2023. Investigators determined that the residence in Assiniboia was operating as a registered home-based daycare. The investigation has been ongoing since the original charges were laid in November 2023. It's being led by the Saskatchewan RCMP Regina General Investigation Section and the Saskatchewan Internet Child Exploitation Unit, with the assistance of the Saskatchewan Digital Forensic Services, the Assiniboia and Cornack RCMP detachments, as well as other RCMP detachments from across Canada, along with victim service organizations here in Saskatchewan. The magnitude of this investigation has proven significant. Investigators have analyzed over 1.5 million pieces of digital evidence. They were obtained from 24 terabytes of seized electronic devices. A team of highly trained investigators have thoroughly examined all evidence and have taken numerous victim and witness statements to help determine the criminal acts that took place. The continued investigation has determined that there are 29 additional victims, and all were youth between the ages of 18 months and 17 years of age the offenses occurred. Majority were male. The offenses occurred as far back as 2005 and continued until November of 2023. After the extensive work of our investigators, on May 13th, 2024, Richard Dyke was charged with the following: 14 counts of sexual assault, 14 counts of sexual interference, 23 counts of making child pornography, 9 counts of voyeurism. He is scheduled to appear in Moose Jaw Provincial Court on June 4th at 10 a.m. There are 32 victims in total, which include the identity of the victims from November who came into contact with Mr. Dyke in a variety of scenarios between the years of 2005 and 2023. The known affected communities include Tisdale, Estevan, Pornac, Assiniboia, Gravelburg. Some of the victims came into contact with Richard Dyke while he attended the home-based daycares. The daycares operated in the following communities: Pornac, Swift Current, Assiniboia. Richard Dyke was also an instructor with the Royal Canadian Air Cadets in several communities in southern Saskatchewan, where he primarily interacted with youth. To date, investigators have not identified any victims in relation to his role with the Air Cadet. Crimes of this nature have a profound impact on victims, their families, and the communities in which they occur. They also weigh heavily on investigators who work tirelessly to bring justice for the victims of crime. The Saskatchewan RCP remain committed to complete a thorough investigation and follow up on every tip and lead we receive. We're sharing Richard Dyke's photo today. We encourage those who may have additional information or believe they or their child may be a victim, contact your local police. And dial 310 RCMP, that's 310-7267, to reach your local RCP detachment. We acknowledge this is a sensitive investigation. Victim services have and will continue to be providing victims and their families support. We're unable to provide additional details at this time to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation, the court process, to be respectful for the privacy of the victims.
Okay. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of evidence. And we'll be hearing a lot more about it. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, the dispute over or between Israel and Hamas, Palestinians moved to Ottawa City Hall today. This is Israel's Independence Day. To mark the occasion, an Israeli flag was raised at Ottawa City Hall. Of course, the event attracted protesters on both sides. Israelis celebrating, Palestinians protesting, I guess would be maybe a more accurate way to look at it. I guess in the end, everybody ended up squaring off against the other side, and yes, there was a little bit of pushing and shoving. Now, the flag was raised at City Hall before 6 a.m., and they had well over a dozen Ottawa police vehicles parked around City Hall when this was all going on. And, of course, somebody we're all familiar with, Chris Dacey, was there during the day to capture a lot of this. On live streams, he had a lot of videos up, and as part of the festivities, he had to endure this. I'm going to share this video with you now. This is what happened to Chris Dacey.
Hey!
live streamer.
Go back where you belong. Go back where you belong. Go back where you belong.
Are you gonna allow this? Come back.
I was born here. I was born here too. I was born here. My grandma lived in their state. My grandma lived to be 102.
Well, I didn't tell them that's enough. They hit me, right?
Tell them enough. I'm not moving. I'm not moving. They came to me. They came to me.
Which one of them?
You pushed them.
Because you guys hit my phone out of my hand.
I didn't hit nothing.
Well, one of you did.
No, I was walking.
One of you did. I was just
And
walking
they
by.
came to me.
Yeah. Still not okay. Standing here, man. Very aggressive lunatic.
What do I have to say?
My phone went flying, John. My phone went flying. I want to get it.
Nobody's got away to Canada. Fight for Canada. Maybe get the terrorists. Take us back to 48.
Why are you living here for votes, right?
Well, they actually came up and smacked the phone out of my hand is how this all started. And screamed and yelled at me.
Because you're an instigator also.
So I was standing here. They came over 20 feet to hit the phone out of my hand, and I'm an instigator. You're screaming here, covered head to toe in disguises, assaulting people. Chanting genocidal chants. Threatening people.
Supporter. Go to Gaza and fight there. You won't get here.
Just leave her alone. She's a sign of scum. She doesn't deserve to be talked to.
People touch me, and you guys don't stop it. I'm going to do something.
They're not worth it. They're not, even this asshole is not worth it. He thinks he's worth it, but he's not worth it.
Hey, you're going to let them rush her like that, too? You guys going to let them rush her, or what? She just charged at her like 5 feet. This all started because that one smashed the phone out of my hand.
No, we're not. Fight for Canada. Where's your Canada flag? Go back home. Where's your Canada flag?
In this case, as I'm watching that, Chris Stacey did nothing wrong. He was just there. He had every right to be there. He was live streaming. And that was assault. He was assaulted, no question about it. And he has a valid point. I've noticed this as well. These protesters are wearing masks. Their faces are covered so that they can't be identified. Is that the motivation, or is there some cultural or religious significance to them wearing these face coverings and even sunglasses in many cases? Just asking. What else do we have going on today? Oh boy. Well, we did the wildfires thing. Oh, I better mention this. CNN. I'm not going to run the report because it is what it is. CNN has a report from a unidentified anonymous whistleblower whose identity is being protected, concealed, saying that Israel is guilty of torturing Palestinian prisoners. The report suggests that the prisoners have had to have their, well, the report says that zip ties are being used to detain the prisoners. And this is what zip ties look like, in case you're just not familiar. So this would be the kind of zip tie, very likely, that is being used in this case. Something like that. Crowd control flex cuffs, commonly used by police, especially in crowd control situations. And they do have images of marks on people's wrists and ankles, apparently from these zip ties. The allegation is that in some cases the zip ties have been applied so tightly that people's hands have been amputated afterward because of the damage that was done using these zip ties. And that's part of the torture. So, as I say, the source for this is an anonymous whistleblower. You can make of that what you want. If you really want to go see that story, you can go over to CNN. I mention it because it was sent to me by someone who made a comment that was clearly designed to push my buttons. But I know exactly what that story is, and I know what journalism is as well. Yeah, they put those zip ties on so hard that the guy's hand had to be amputated afterward. And a bunch of people had to have their hands amputated, limbs amputated because of using zip ties. Yeah. That's the story anyway. What else do we have tonight? Well, since we've talked about Biden, I guess we better talk a little bit about Trump, right? Trump back in court. What do we know today? Well, today's trial. Stormy Daniels case, right? The hush money case. Star witness Michael Cohen resumed his testimony today. Talked about making a $130,000 hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, porn star. The payment was made to suppress her story about an alleged affair with Donald Trump. What else happened? What other highlights? Well, we know that Trump lawyer Todd Blanche began cross-examination. He was there to paint Cohen, Trump's former lawyer and fixer, as a perjurer and convicted felon. And back in 2018, Cohen did plead guilty to several crimes, including lying to Congress about plans to build a Trump Tower in Moscow and tax fraud. Trump is facing 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide the reimbursement of that money to Cohen for the payment he made to Daniels. He's denied the charges. We have Trump commenting on this tonight in this video on Truth Social. Here we go.
No, I'm under a gag order, so I can't really answer those very simple questions that you're asking. I'm under a gag order. Nobody's actually seen anything like it. But we talk about subjects we're allowed to talk about. Would love to not be in the gag order. I'm the Republican nominee for president. I'm leading in every poll, and I have a gag order. So I think it's totally unconstitutional, and we'll test that. This will be tested, because this should never happen to another candidate or another person, what's happening here. And today we had a very good day in court. You see what's happening. And you'll have to report it because I can't talk about it too much. But I think it was a very, very good day. The voters are getting a John McLaughlin, probably number one poll number with Fabrizio John McLaughlin's probably the #1 pollster. And voters are getting it. They don't like the idea that the courts are deciding the presidential election. Well, so far my numbers were leading by a lot, as you know, against crooked Joe Biden. Charlie Hurt, a great person, great reporter. The problem for Democrats is that the extensive polling now shows that the voters see through their scam and don't like what's going on. Watching 100,000 enthusiastic people gather along the boardwalk in New Jersey Beach this Saturday, as you probably saw, to support former President Trump on Saturday evening gives you some idea how terrified Democrats are of Trump. Well, I'm not saying it, that he's saying it. I don't think they're terrified of anything. They're fascists. Whatever happens, they cannot face him in the fair and honest election. There's no way anybody else is going to beat Trump. And they're using election interference to try and do it. And he then goes, because they lose and they know it. If it's a fair election, basically he's saying they lose and they know it. Jeff Zeleny, CNN. As I talk to the voters across the country in these battleground states, many of them aren't paying attention. The reason the president is having trouble, President Biden is having problems, is because young voters, voters of color, and inflation. Young voters, voters of color, and inflation. That is a problem for Biden. Byron York, great person, great reporter, journalist. For months, Democrats had hoped that the specter of Trump on trial would cut into the former president's support. Now we're in the 5th week. Can you believe I've been in here for 5 weeks instead of campaigning? It's a shame, which of course is their dream. It might not be working out the way they anticipated, but that's what they wanted to do, keep me in here as long as possible. Now we're in the 5th week of the trial with wall-to-wall media coverage, and it appears to have not affected Trump's support at all. The Real Clear Politics analyst, Sean Trende, wrote recently, the political science literature is pretty consistent that this is the time when the electorate's views are about the election and it starts to harden, and basically they say we're doing really well. You're seeing all the polls. Alan Dershowitz, a great gentleman. This is election interference at the most obvious, and every American, no matter whether you're on the Trump team or against him, whatever political affiliation it is, and he goes on to say he's a Democrat. He can't be right about everything because he's making a big mistake. If you're Jewish and you're a Democrat, and that includes Alan Dershowitz, you ought to have your head examined. You see what's going on with Israel. But he goes, I'm a Democrat. We should be equally concerned about how the legal system is being weaponized and abused for partisan purposes. Remember this. All over the world, they're watching this trial, and they're seeing what a disgrace this is, and a big disgrace to New York. You know, I love this state. I love this city. And they've got to get it back. They've got to get the legal system back, because businesses are leaving. People are fleeing, but businesses are leaving because they can't go through what I'm going through. Speaker Mike Johnson was here a little while ago. He says, just apply common sense. Take a look at what's happening. Just apply common sense. A great gentleman, Victor Davis Hanson. None of the 5 civil or criminal cases currently lodged against former President Donald Trump, by the way, all going through Washington. This is all election interference by Biden. Have ever had merit. None of them have had merit. These criminal and civil trials are merely the continuation of extra legal efforts of the last 8 years to destroy a presidential candidate in lieu of opposing him in a transparent election. Enemies like China and Russia now boast that America's new political prosecutions are similar to those of their own system, and even more so. That's Victor Davis Hanson, and he goes on with a beautiful statement, and I won't bore you, but the public isn't bored by him at all, and they agree with him 100%. Let's see any president who would go through the justice system, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's a disgrace what's happening. This is something that shouldn't be happening. Tom Fitton. I've carefully tracked the at-real Donald Trump trial up in New York. The prosecution, in quotes, prosecution meaning persecution, hasn't presented any evidence of a crime by Trump whatsoever. Judge Merchan is, well, he says very negative things about him. I don't want to say that about the judge. I'm not going to say that today about the judge. Matt Whitaker, former acting attorney general, I'm deeply concerned about the trial in New York targeting President Trump. It's very unfair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Brett Tolman, gag order is a tool utilized to protect defendants, rarely if ever applied to one side. They've never seen anything like this gag order. You haven't either. And hopefully you will never again. It's never seen before. It applied to only defendants. You have a constitutional problem without ability to say anything about your own case. I am not allowed to talk about big portions of my case. And nothing like that's ever happened. They're allowed to talk, the other side, but I'm not. Governor Doug Burgum, who was here also. Many politicians were here today, many congressmen and senators, etc. You met some of them. We know from the polls that President Trump is leading all over the country, and the conclusion is that the American people have already acquitted President Trump. I believe that's true, and I believe that a large portion, 80-some-odd%, say this trial is a disgrace. And so are the others, by the way, if you look at the way they're going. Take a look at what's going on in Florida with deranged Jack Smith. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He got caught doing things that you're not supposed to. That's why we call him deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged person. Representative Byron Donalds, terrific young congressman. This is a travesty of justice. Look around New York. New York's got a lot of issues, and he talks about the issues. We have people being killed right outside, and yet we have 20 prosecutors sitting over there for what most people, almost every single legal analyst says, no crime. There's no crime. But we've got all the DAs in there, and they say it's no crime. Corey Mills, this is nothing more than election interference at its finest. The American people see the sham indictment for what it is. So that's it. Look, the trial is going very well. It's the 4th week. I've been stuck in here for 4 weeks. I call it the icebox. We call it the icebox. Now, today, this is what they should be looking at right here. That's what they should. This is called our new wave of crime, migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime because he's allowed probably 15, 16 million people into our country having no idea who they are. Many are from prisons and jails. Many are from mental institutions and even insane asylums. They're emptying out all over the world. They're coming into our beautiful USA. And this is a man just charged with the death of a 3-month-old baby. This right here. This is what we're allowing into our country. No checks, no nothing. And then on the economy, interest rates are rising at a rapid rate. And inflation is going up very, very powerfully. And if you know what inflation really is, it's a country buster. Inflation over the last, if you look over 500 years, you look at countries with inflation, they're busted. They bust up countries. And that's what we have. We have record inflation, and it's back. And people are dying because of it. You would have had no inflation with me. We were down to practically nothing. You have record inflation, and it's back, and you have very high interest rates. People can't buy homes. They can't buy anything. They go for food, and it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% more than it was just a couple of years ago. So that's a shame. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, we had a very good day. I think we're exposing this scam for what it is. Thank you very much.
You know, this trial, I think overall it might end up being a positive thing for Trump because it gives him a platform. The media is there covering this story every single day. He comes out, he has a scrum, he has the media focused on him. You go to any website for any of the major media, mainstream media outlets in the United States on any given day, and Trump has a headline right at the top. In fact, tonight it's top left-hand corner on several of the major news websites. Even if he doesn't campaign, he's in the news every single day. You can't buy that kind of advertising. Even if it might be viewed as negative to some people, and it's a positive thing for him in the eyes of others, because he's portraying himself as a victim, as a martyr, if you will. So there he is on television screens, on the internet, across social media, every single day. Even though they banned him on Facebook and YouTube, etc., it isn't hurting him at all. The trial gives him all kinds of media attention, all kinds of FaceTime. It's amazing. And he dominates the news cycle. He's been at the top for months and months and months. I'd say he gets more coverage with his scandals and trials than Biden gets with any announcement that he makes on any policy or any law that he comes out with. Trump is getting way more mileage out of his court case today than Biden is getting with his announcement on tariffs against China, which is actually more in line with what Trump policies were when he was in the White House. Back to the auto industry, or at least car-related stuff. As you know, car theft continues to be a major problem in Canada, in particular in Ontario and the Greater Toronto area, where auto theft is running rampant. We saw that controversial statement from a community policing officer a few weeks back who suggested Toronto area residents leave their car keys in the front hall by the front door, so that if a car thief were to break into their home, it would be safer for the residents to just leave their keys at the front door for the thief, so they could just grab them right there conveniently by the front door and then just take off with the car. Of course, that didn't sit well with taxpayers. There was public backlash against that statement, and later police did clarify what they were talking about. It wasn't like they meant to encourage people to just kind of throw up their arms and give up. But now the provincial government in Ontario is looking at much tougher penalties for car thieves. In fact, car thieves could end up losing their driver's licenses for life. Under this proposed new law, anyone convicted of motor vehicle theft would automatically lose their license for 10 years. And with the prospect of potentially losing it for life as part of that new legislation, that new law, if it comes into effect, I'd say that would be a pretty effective deterrent. Now, cars aren't the only things being stolen by thieves in the automotive realm. You're also seeing, get this, out in California, Tesla charging units, Tesla chargers, they're having their cables cut, and thieves are getting into these charging units and stealing the copper inside of them. Here, take a look at this.
Cut all the Tesla charging cables. You would think that it's a protest or some symbol of activism, but it's not. It's the Bay Area. These things have a load of copper in them. So you're gonna recycle them and cash them in.
I mean, it isn't really funny. It's a problem. But copper? What is the price of copper? Let's look it up. Copper today is worth $4.91. What is that? A pound of copper, kilogram, pound, is about $4.59 a pound. $4.59 a pound. It's worth some coin. That's why they're stealing the wiring from Tesla car charging units. Another downside to the electrification of the auto industry. Stay with me. More ahead.
Hello, world. Are you awake? Uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program. For your mind.
Well, we talked about Biden, we talked about Trump. I guess we better say something about RFK Jr. But I won't say it. I'll let JP Sears say it. Online influencer and comedian. Oh, hang on. Is there any audio? Well, it's just, this is audio. This audio is terrible, so forget that. There's something wrong with JP Sears' audio. Well, let's just say JP Sears likes RFK Jr. How about that? Another technical glitch tonight. Someone was asking if Jean-Pierre, press secretary at the White House, has been canned because we showed the clip from Ambassador Tai. No, that's just, they brought Ambassador Tai, Catherine Tai, into the news conference today because she was the one who wrote the report that led to the change in policy direction on the Biden administration on tariffs. So, there you go. What else do we have tonight? We have Secretary of State Antony Blinken. I didn't know he could play the guitar. Some people are losing their minds over this. I guess he's been over in Ukraine, and after taking care of business, Secretary of State type business, he decided to head out to a nightclub or a bar, but not so much just a party. He went there to play. And I think the song that he's playing, I don't know, did he know that he was being recorded and that this would end up on social media? Seems like an appropriate choice. Some people losing their minds. I don't know, it's like, was he doing something wrong by doing this? I don't know. I'm just telling you, this is what happened. This was it. Didn't sound half bad, except I don't care much for his singing. I think his guitar playing is better than his singing. I'd say don't give up your day job, but oh, well, everybody should have the right to kick back and relax a little bit, I guess. Pierre Poilievre on the offense again today out in British Columbia, I believe, in Vancouver, where he said that a conservative government would pass an act, if elected, to ban the use of hard drugs in hospitals. Now, this ban would not apply to drugs prescribed by doctors. The federal government has already complied with British Columbia's request to recriminalize the use of hard drugs in public spaces, but Poilievre's proposed ban would end the health minister's power to grant exemptions under the Controlled Drug and Substances Act to other jurisdictions looking to decriminalize drug use in hospitals. The act would also allow judges to impose tougher sentences if a criminal has a weapon in a hospital. And I know, actually, I've seen it. Doctors, nurses, in particular nurses, are sometimes subjected to real abuse and even violence in a hospital setting, especially when dealing with angry patients or patients suffering from dementia, crazy people, mentally ill people. It can be a very dangerous job that way. Here's Poilievre explaining a little bit about this today.
You've just given birth to a newborn. Imagine you've just given birth to a newborn, and instead of enjoying this precious, once-in-a-lifetime moment, you smell hard drugs in the air. Crack or meth being smoked just a few hospital rooms over. Imagine you've been in a car accident, you're fighting for your life, and someone in the bed next to you lights up a crack pipe. You look down and see that that person has a large machete in their bag. You tell the nurse or the doctor, and they say, sorry, it's allowed now, and we've been forbidden from touching or taking away these weapons and drugs, so you're just going to have to hope that this person does not harm you. Now, this might sound like something out of a horror film, not from the real world. But unfortunately, after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP, the real world is a horror film. Because what I just described is exactly what the BC Nurses Union has publicly reported. They have reported that members of their union were unable to breastfeed their kids because they had breathed in crack or meth smoke at work and were worried about the poison that might then have contaminated their breast milk. This is the almost hallucinogenic reality that 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP have caused. After 9 years of Trudeau, everything costs more. Work doesn't pay. You make it. Trudeau takes it. Housing costs have more than doubled. Here in Vancouver, if you take the average paycheck and try to pay the mortgage on the average house, it eats up more than 100% of your pre-tax income. So even if the average Vancouverite were to stop paying taxes, stop eating, stop taking a vacation, stop buying clothes, stop driving, stop doing anything else, they still wouldn't have enough out of their paycheck to make a mortgage payment every single month. Vancouver is now the third most overpriced housing market in the world, and Toronto has been declared the worst housing bubble on planet Earth after 9 years of Trudeau. After 9 years of Trudeau, we have the worst economic growth in the G7. Our per capita GDP has been falling now for 6 consecutive quarters. Canadians are earning $4,200 less than they were on track to earn before Trudeau. Per person. That's 17,000 per family. I say all of this because obviously, let's not be naive about it. The immense financial strain that people are under is contributing to the drug crisis that has exploded over the last 9 years. But we cannot ignore the fact that Trudeau and the NDP have imposed radical policies that made everything worse. They have decriminalized hard drugs, a mistake that the NDP has now admitted has contributed to the problem. They allowed crack to be smoked in parks next to kids. They allowed meth to be smoked on public transit next to seniors late at night when our elderly were all alone. And of course, they allowed hard drug use and weapons in our hospitals. They continue to give out tax-funded opioids provided by the same companies that caused the crisis in the first place, who continue to profit off the misery, and the results are in. There is an increase of 380% in drug overdose deaths under these NDP Liberal policies. This radical ideological approach is killing our people. Now, it will be a while before we hold the carbon tax election, at which time common sense conservatives can choose a different path to bring home safety. In the meantime, we are determined to protect our hospitals from this Liberal NDP insanity. And that is why I'm here today. Since Trudeau formed government, over 4,200 Canadians have died of overdoses, a 400% increase in Nanaimo alone. The results have been catastrophic. The BC Nurses Union has reported that meth has been smoked in a unit just hours before the birth of a newborn baby. In northern BC, the Public Health Agency put out a memo telling hospital staff to allow patients to bring knives and other weapons into hospitals. This is the result of the wacko decriminalization Trudeau and the NDP brought in. 2 years ago, the Liberal government granted the BC NDP request to allow hard drugs across the province, including in public places. This reckless and radical and wacko policy has killed 2,500 British Columbians in 1 year alone. Meanwhile, community spaces like soccer fields and hospitals and city squares are devastated by crime. The Abbotsford Soccer Association had to comb through the field before the games to make sure there were no dirty needles, crack pipes, or other drug paraphernalia. British Columbians are seeing their pets have drug overdoses from sniffing dangerous substances that have been left in formerly idyllic and peaceful parks. Not only that, but now Trudeau is considering a request from Toronto to replicate his radical experiment with decriminalization. Enough is enough. Common sense conservatives will not allow this devastation and this experiment to play out in other Canadian communities. Canadians deserve a government that will keep hard drugs out of hospitals and will protect staff and patients. We will pass the Safe Hospitals Act. It will create an aggravating factor for sentencing anyone who brings an illegal and unauthorized weapon into a hospital. 2, it will take away the discretion from the federal health minister under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act to decriminalize illicit drugs like fentanyl and meth, crack, and heroin in hospitals. This means that if Trudeau grants Toronto or Montreal's request to decriminalize hard drugs, our hospitals will be protected. We will also push for the immediate passage of common sense Conservative MP Todd Doherty's Bill C-321, which will create an aggravating factor for assaults committed against healthcare workers and first responders. In other words, if you attack a nurse, a paramedic, or a doctor, you will go to jail for longer. To be clear, this common sense bill, the Safe Hospitals Act, will not apply to any drugs prescribed by medical professionals like doctors and nurses. The Safe Hospitals Act will stop some of the insanity that Trudeau and the NDP have unleashed in our communities. Not only that, we will give Canadians a choice in the next election. between a costly coalition of Trudeau and the NDP that tax your food, punish your work, take your money, double your housing cost, and unleash crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in your community. Or common sense conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Now, let's bring it home. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Don't go away. I'll come back on the other side.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
In Russia, the Kimprom chemical plant in the city of Novochebokharsk, I hope I'm pronouncing that, Novochebokharsk, caught fire. Now, I've seen reports over the past number of hours, 24 hours, that there were some drone attacks. I don't know how true that is, but this is obviously very real. What the exact cause of this blaze at this chemical plant is, I'm not exactly sure, but it does produce a range of products, and some of those do involve or integrate into the supply chain for Russian military, providing materials for body armor and helmets. I'll bring up the video here for you, just to show you how big this is. This is pretty huge. And here we go. Another minor inconvenience of sorts. Okay, and we were just coming off the tail end there of that news conference with Pierre Poilievre, talking about 9 years of Justin Trudeau. Well, leaving that news conference that we showed you earlier, in Port Colborne, Ontario, where he announced that new battery supply chain, that battery separator plant in Port Colborne is going to be opening. This is how people greeted him, or maybe bid him farewell, as he was leaving Port Colborne today. Here we go. Not a popular guy these days. And everywhere he goes, he gets that kind of treatment now. Remember when he first was elected? He was the darling of the media. Everyone was interested in his hair and his socks. Oh, the honeymoon period is definitely over, isn't it? For Justin Trudeau. What a strange time. I met with a friend of mine today. Had sort of a semi-business meeting. Wasn't really business at all. He's an old business partner of mine from a ways back. He's, we don't really see eye to eye a lot on politics, but that's okay. We had a great get-together today, but one thing we did agree on the political front is that something is off. People have changed. It really started in a major way around the beginning of the pandemic. We both agreed on that. What the problem is, I think I have a better bead on it than he does, because I am immersed in the world of media every day here. And I think it's largely connected to media and a lot of other factors as well. But the media is the main driving force. Just thought I'd mention it to you today. I found it, I guess, encouraging to meet with him, because as much as, and I'll share this with you, he's not immersed in it. And he is not focused on the world in the same way that I am, or I think even most of you in the chat, our regular viewers are. He's sort of out there detached, as I think the majority of people still are. Now, he sees that things have gone a little bit off the rails and the world's a little bit sideways these days. But speaking to him, I think that disengagement, the fact that people are not that engaged in politics might actually be a good thing, because a lot of this stuff is enough to really drive you insane after a while. And I think in some cases that might actually be the goal or the objective behind some of the people who are putting this information out for the public to consume, because it seems to me that there is a giant psyop underway. That's why I vowed to you a long time ago that I personally, I would not lie to you. I'm not going to lead you astray. The difficult thing is that, well, sometimes when you sit in this chair, I feel compelled to tell the truth, knowing that some people just don't want the truth. The real truth. People want confirmation bias, or bias confirmation. They want to hear what they want you. They want you to say what they want to hear. I'm not always doing that. I'm committed to serving you properly, and I'm going to continue to do it. And I had a secondary conversation with someone who is a little more immersed in media, and we talked about this very subject, and we agreed that now more than ever, we need to keep people grounded, and we need to stay focused on the real truth, not crazy stuff, not fake stuff, regardless of what side it comes from, and not just agree with people or go along to get along. No, now more than ever, we need to focus on reality, truth. And you know, getting there, some people would say it's about free speech, but it's about more than free speech. We've had a free speech experiment going on. I've called it an experiment because this medium, social media, is a new frontier. We opened up our chat room, and I've tried to make it as much of a free speech place as possible within the restrictions laid out by the social media platforms themselves, by the laws that govern the country, and therefore social media platforms, the terms and conditions that these companies lay out for us. So we have to abide by their rules on any given platform, like YouTube, Facebook, as we've discussed. But I've tried to keep the chat open. Today, this video was brought to my attention, and I thought it was very relevant given the current state of our experiment, social media, free speech experiment here on the Maverick News platform, multi-pronged as it is across various social media platforms. This is a former RCMP officer. This is Dominic Siasia. And he talks about the government changing the laws in a way that will make it easier for them to prosecute people who criticize the government. And these new pieces of legislation being introduced definitely do take us further down that road, and probably I think I agree, in an inappropriate way. But that being said, what he does here in this clip that I'm about to play for you is he does outline some important points related to free speech, and it is relevant to our free speech platform, or our free speech experiment right here, the one that we've been conducting. So I'm going to bring this up and play this for you. I'm probably going to stop this from time to time just to comment as he makes his address.
Hey everybody, how you doing today? Well, the RCMP has gone full Gestapo on us. And I'm not kidding. I'm not being hyperbolic. Well, okay, maybe I am. But I'm a former RCMP officer. I'm retired, and a lot of you probably know that if you're following me. But I don't just blindly follow or accept what the RCMP does as being perfect or even reasonable. Well, right now, the commissioner of the RCMP has gone off the deep end. He's violated every principle that a police officer should hold dear. What I'm talking about now is a primary use of a police force in a civilized society should be to protect people's rights, to protect them physically, to protect their property, and to protect their rights. Those are the primary functions of a police force, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people think, well, it's just to enforce the law, write tickets, throw people in jail. No, it's to protect people, protect their rights. Mike DeHume,
keep them safe.
The commissioner of the RCMP, now wants additional laws written that will prevent you from criticizing politicians. I'm not making this stuff up. Specifically, he wants to outlaw invective language used towards politicians. So that would be like saying Trudeau is a rotten scoundrel. That's an example of invective language. Are you kidding me?
Okay, so just keep in mind, this isn't happening. This is a politician who would like to do this. And the RCMP talking about this invective language. We're not there yet, but is being discussed.
He wants to outlaw that. He says that because the threshold of uttering threats is often not reached when people criticize the government, they need this new law. That is a complete violation of our right to free speech, freedom of expression. And personally, I think that politicians are the one class of people that are free game for criticism. Think about it. We pay them, but they control us, especially the liberals. And when a person is harming you by what they're doing in Ottawa, you should have every right to criticize them and use harsh language. Now, I don't agree with using rude comments against most people, and everybody has a line that they're not willing to cross. And for most people, their line is be polite. But then when it comes to politicians, that line moves, and it should move. Because as I said, we pay them, and when they harm us with their policies and their legislation, we have a right to criticize them. So if Jordan Peterson calls Trudeau a narcissist or an idiot, the commissioner wants that to be illegal. Right now, what the commissioner says they do is try to disrupt the language or the person by sending constables to that person's door. What they're saying is they don't want people to criticize politicians, so they're intimidating them because that's all they can do. Well, in my book, that's too much.
Well, in my experience, what I've seen is police will go to someone's door if someone has been on social media and they've gone beyond just using invective language. If they go to a place where they are talking about possibly doing harm, physical harm, or even killing a politician, or inciting violence in some way, if they talk about a politician and talk about that politician in a way where they might harm the politician, yes, police very likely are going to show up on your door. It's entirely possible. That is why I've been telling people to keep it clean in the chat for a long time.
There's a line not to cross. Don't threaten anybody. That's against the law. Don't use...
Right. Threatening someone is against the law. That's why when I've seen people in the chat using that kind of language, when they get to the point where they're even suggesting in a roundabout way that someone should be harmed or that there's a threat, even an implied threat, no, can't have that happening, because the person engaging in that kind of banter in the chat is not only putting themselves that person is not only putting themselves at risk, they're putting other people around them at risk as well, depending on how people may respond to that. We can't even let that take root in the chat, let alone grow.
Traditionally censored language, like offensive language, swearing, and whatnot. That's against the law as well. They've already got a law against that. In public, you're not allowed to swear in public in Canada. A lot of people probably don't know this, but that's called disturbing the peace.
Precisely, which is another reason why we've been trying to clean up the chat, because first of all, it doesn't reflect well on the channel. Secondly, it is technically illegal. Not that I'm worried that the cops are going to show up on my door or on your door because you've used maybe an F-bomb or something. There's a wide degree of latitude that can be afforded in an instance like that. But nevertheless, it's not good for the channel. It's not good for the chat. It is actually illegal. We're trying to take things to a more professional level here. And it is disturbing the peace. It's disturbing the chat when people engage in that kind of banter in there. And that is what we've been trying to address with varying levels of success.
That is a law in Canada. You're not allowed to threaten somebody. That's a law in Canada. You're not allowed to harass somebody. That's a law in Canada.
Precisely. And I would say that we've seen some instances of harassment in the chat as well. And that's the kind of thing that we're also trying to clean up. And then people complain and say, you're violating my free speech if I'm not allowed to just say whatever I want. No, that kind of activity, that kind of language is not free speech. That's disturbing the peace. That's harassment. That rises to a different level. It crosses a line, and this former police officer is quite right when he points that out. He's also quite right in pointing out that our government here in Canada, and I would say in the United States as well, is continues to engage in a degree of overreach, and they want to overreach even more by changing the laws to make them even more restrictive.
And now he wants to prevent people from using invective language. What next? I don't think this is actually coming from him. I think it's coming from Trudeau, to be honest, because it's right up Trudeau's alley. We've seen it with Bill C-63 and a whole bunch of other things. So now Trudeau has plausible deniability. He can say, well, it wasn't my idea. Yeah, I'm not buying it. It's my opinion that this is Trudeau's idea, and it's my...
Right. And that seems to be pretty much right on the money. And I think that he's offered some good advice there, some very valuable perspective. It is true. And that's why we can't have this happening in the chat. And so, unfortunately, there's been discussion. That's not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is that a few people have chosen to ignore the warnings and not honor a request to simply keep it civil and polite in the chat. Just a little bit of civil discourse. So anyway, I just thought I'd play that. That was sent to me through the day today. I watched that and I thought, yeah, that's a useful clip to play, because it's one thing for me to sit here and talk about these things, but it's nice to have someone else's perspective on this subject as well. And I hope that you found that useful tonight. Now, folks, that gets us to a point in the evening where I'm going to take a little break, come back on the other side. If you want to support this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe over on YouTube. Ring the notification bell. Please take a look at what we're doing over on Rumble. Subscribe to our Rumble channels. And that would help us out a whole lot. We're over on Twitch, and we're on X as well. We also upload videos now to TikTok and Instagram. We're over there a bit. We're also over on Gab, Brighteon, HugeTube, Wimkin. Although the feed didn't catch over on Wimkin again tonight. Some of the platforms are a little bit clunky when it comes to the live streams. You can also support the channel, and we do need your help to pay the bills this month. You can, and I'm way behind in trying to get out some email thank yous that I need to send to folks. I'm so busy every day preparing this broadcast. It literally only leaves me, I only have like maybe 2 hours a day of any free time, and I try to devote that even to doing some work. I tried to get some emails sent out today to a couple of people that I really wanted to say thank you to for some past support, and I didn't get it done again today. I'm really sorry. If you've donated recently, thank you. I can't tell you how much it means. It's just you guys that keep us functioning here. Totally demonetized on YouTube, Facebook. Not working on Facebook anymore. We were never monetized over there at all. It's entirely you guys who keep this whole thing going. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support. And if you do want to help us, you can donate at maverickdonations.com. You can also donate over at freedomreporters.com. That's the PayPal link. And that's where most people donate. Oh, also, yes, we still do have the t-shirts. If you donate $30 or more, I can send you a t-shirt. Just let me know what size you need in the comments. When you make the donation, it'll come back. We have embroidered shirts, $60 or more, and I will send you an embroidered shirt or a hoodie. We've got long sleeve t-shirts too. They're $45. They're like a long sleeve t-shirt. It's like a lightweight, sort of like a sweatshirt, but lighter. Sort of like a concert tee is what they are. $45, and I'll send you one of those, a Maverick News shirt. And with that, I will now finally take this break and come back momentarily. Stay with me.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching. Feel the vibrations. Our quest continues. The truth is out there. We are Mavericks.
Okay, Ron DeSantis in Florida has signed a new law raising the age for strippers, exotic dancers, from the minimum age from 18 to 21. DeSantis says he's doing it to fight human trafficking. Now, this is Chris Nelson, online streamer, and he says he doesn't agree with the decision by DeSantis. I'm going to run his clip. Might be a little bit of, well, it's something for people to think about, for you guys to ponder. And I'll look in the chat and see if anybody has any reaction to this. What do you think of this decision by DeSantis to raise the age, the minimum age for strippers from 18 to 21?
Hey, what's up, guys? Chris here, and just came from a DeSantis presser today where he signed a law that is going to raise the stripping age in Florida from 18 to 21. So if you are a man or a woman, which at 18 our government has said you're a man or a woman when you're 18. But now, unless you are over 21, you're not going to be able to strip at a strip club. And this is a missile launched directly at strip clubs. I mean, this is definitely the first step in making them illegal. I don't go to strip clubs, and it's not some moral high ground that I'm trying to take or anything. I just don't find that to be a good use of my money and my time. I think a lot of times in those kind of places that the customers are the ones that are being exploited more than the people that are dancing. But it's just, I've been to one strip club in my entire life. I went to one in Orlando, and it wasn't a really fun experience. But I know a lot of guys like to go to these things, and you know, that's not. I mean, I think you have to be careful when society starts to make moral judgment calls. I mean, you know, that of course, you know, people who have a certain religion or religious beliefs can believe how they feel. But when the government starts making moral calls on things like this, especially when you can go into crippling debt at 18, okay? And I mean, you want to talk about damage to somebody and damage to somebody's life? Just look at the debt that you can go into at 18 years old. I mean, you got people that are being put in $100,000+ of debt to go to these colleges, and that's happening to them at 18. And if that's not something that's predatory, I don't know what is. And also, you can go to war at 18. You can fight in the military. You can sign legal documents. So it's just like, where do we draw the line here? I mean, do we draw the line? When are you an adult? Or when can you make decisions for yourself? Ron DeSantis stands up for the right for you to buy a gun at 18, okay, which I agree with, all right? But he also then signs a law that says you can't strip until you're 21. And then they're doing this whole sex trafficking. Oh, it's sex trafficking. Our studies show that most of the people get into sex trafficking are 20 years old. Okay, well, I mean, it's like that. I hear you, believe me, but is that really is punishing people who want to use that as a line of work? Is that the right move to make? And where do we draw the line? Where do we become the nanny state? I mean, you know, because if you go to other countries, go to Europe, you know, when you're 18, you're 18. You can do whatever you want. You know, you're an adult at that point. And I feel like in America, we baby people. We tell you, oh, you're not old enough to do this. Oh, and then we have people living with their parents until they're in their 30s. And you know, it's like, when are you an adult? When can you make your own moves? So I just got to say, you know, I really, after considering this and seeing all this, I don't think that this is the right thing. I hope that people sue over this, because I don't think it's right to take away that ability from somebody who's an adult, okay? Unless you're gonna say, look, we're now raising as an America the age to be an adult and take responsibility for your own decisions to 21. If we're gonna do that, then just do it across the board. But at this point, to be doing this thing, well, we can send you to die in war. We can put you into crippling debt. That's okay, but you can't go and strip to pay off that debt. Because I mean, just the fact is that there are girls, whether you agree with it or not, who use that as a way to make really good money at a part in their life, and they can't do that forever. They reach an age pretty quickly that they're unable to do that kind of work anymore. So. Yeah, I know this is an unpopular position. I know people are like, "Oh, Chris, you're disgusting. You support sex trafficking," and I think I really don't like things like that, because that's why I think a lot of people are afraid to say this, especially people that are typically line up with the right on most things, because you get the onslaught on social media from people who then claim you're pro sex trafficking or whatever, and I think that kind of those accusations that go back and forth on Twitter are not helpful. Just like I now see that lobbing that title of groomer at people on the left just because they have a different not because they are a groomer, but because they have just a different political view than you. I don't agree with doing that anymore. I did that, and I don't think that was a good thing. And I think we need to have these kind of conversations. But yeah, the more I think about it, the more I don't agree with this. To make the stripping age 21, and this is nothing new to me. I honestly, I don't go to strip clubs, so I'm not going to be going to one anytime soon. I don't go to them. But when are you an adult? Are we? Why is it that you can do certain things at 18, but now you can't do this? And isn't it a little bit hypocritical of Governor DeSantis to be for the gun buying age to be 18? Okay, you can buy a gun at 18. It's 21 now in Florida. He tried to make it 18 again. It became 21 after Parkland. But why is that okay? But the stripping age should be 21. This is Chris Nelson. Thanks for watching.
And thank you, Chris. What do you guys think? Well, I'm looking in the chat over here on this one channel, and a bunch of different comments about it. Julie Bean says the government pushes kink. Patty says ban all strip clubs and porn. And also says this is libertarian nonsense. And Helena Jennings says great. Magic Moon says good idea. And what else is being said? Antonio, if this guy's not in favor of being exploited, I don't see his complaint, regardless of age. And Seize the Day says, protect immature brains. What's going on over on Rumble? What are people saying about destruction of marriages and families? Is what Rosie says. Pie Master 15 says, peeling pays the bills. Rock Monster, word of M. Write your message on IT the adult way. Use your words. Whatever that means. Stoic Teacher says, 18-year-olds. I'm reading things backward here. And Stoic Teacher says his logic is sound. And Johnny says fake ID works. Okay, whatever. I don't know. What I do know is the only thing that seems to keep me sane these days is my dog. So I thought I'd queue up a... Well, just, you know how David Letterman used to do stupid pet tricks on his show? Well, this is stupid human tricks played on dogs. I just thought this would be fun for tonight. So here we go. Now, I don't know about you, but that dog must not have a very good nose. Can't find his owner under the blanket.
Last time I'm driving too far. I'd like to change my point of view. I feel so low.
Better mute the audio because we don't own the rights to that music. And, oh, where did the ball go? I do stuff like that with my dog too, but he's too smart. He knows where I put it. Silent movies. I should put some sound of a film projector or something behind this. Yeah, I do that too. I fake throwing the ball, put it behind my back like that. One more. Yep, that's what I do too. stuff like that. But my dog's way too smart. He always figures it out. Anyway, guys, that's it for tonight. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I will be back tomorrow. Same news time, same news channel. We do have a special guest coming onto the program tomorrow. Derek Smith will be here. Mayoral candidate for Calgary, author of How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom. We're going to be talking about what's going on in Calgary on the political scene. We just went through a big recall effort out there. Kind of an unusual, well, not unusual, but an uncommon occurrence. He's going to fill us in on what happened with the current mayor of Calgary and the efforts to remove the mayor from office. We'll expand on the conversation too, I'm sure. Derek always has a lot to share with us. Also a lover of freedom, so really looking forward to the conversation with him tomorrow. And as I say, I will be back tomorrow night, same time, same channel. And I just need to find the right closer here tonight. And there it is right there. Thank you, guys. I will catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.